Peace, love, everybody, and welcome to God Wins TV. My name is Reverend Sonja, and today I'd like to talk to you about speaking in tongues and how to speak in tongues. This is going to be a series of videos, and by the time we're done, you should be not only speaking in tongues, but you should be using tongues as very, very powerfully in your lives. So if you have concerns about your family, about your friends, about your community, about your government, even if you have concerns about the weather, your business, any kind of concerns in your life, speaking in tongues is a very, very powerful tool that you can use. And when you do use it, you will see miracles if you know how to use it properly. So by the time you're done, you should be able to be seeing miracles in your life through speaking in tongues. So what is speaking in tongues? In my eyes, what happens is the Holy Spirit comes down, comes into your body, and it is a physical manifestation of the Holy Spirit in your life, because it's the Holy Spirit speaking through you, and it is Him telling the angels what to do concerning the thing that you are praying about. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to talk about is you need to be able to have the attitude, not my will, but thine be done. Okay, not my will, God, but your will. Okay, so to start off, let's talk a little bit about some history. So Jesus said to his disciples one day, I'm going to head up to heaven right now, but when I go, I'm going to send the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is going to be here to help you in your everyday stuff. Okay, so he's going to do all kinds of miracles and that sort of thing, and so just hang around Jerusalem, don't leave, and just get together, and the Holy Spirit is going to come. So that's what they did. Jesus went to heaven, and they hung around Jerusalem, and they were all in one room one day, and all of a sudden there's this big mighty wind, and the Holy Spirit comes, and it's like this big wind comes through the windows, and there's flames of, looks like fire, coming from their heads, on the tops of their heads, because actually that's where the Holy Spirit enters, and they began speaking in tongues. Okay, so now some churches believe that that's the only way that you know that you've been baptized with the Holy Spirit is through speaking in tongues. But the Holy Spirit actually brings several other gifts with it. So speaking in tongues is only one of the gifts. Okay, so continuing with the story, the disciples and whoever was all in the upper room, they call it, they went outside, and there was a whole pile of people outside from different parts of the whole world. And they heard them speaking in other languages. Say if there was a Chinese person standing there, they would hear them speaking in Chinese. Okay. If there was a Japanese person there, or a British person there, they would hear them speaking in their own language. Okay, so now I've heard that in different circumstances, that somebody would be up on the stage, and people in the audience are different ethnic groups. The person up on the stage speaks in tongues, and to the person on the stage, they're speaking just the heavenly language. They don't understand what it is they're saying. That's the mystery about speaking in tongues. You don't understand what it is that you're saying. Okay. And they just go ahead and speak. But the people in the audience each hear different things according to what the Holy Spirit allows them to hear. So they could hear their own language very clearly. The Holy Spirit is telling them something about themselves or ministering to them in some way. Okay, so that's one of the mysteries about speaking in tongues. I want to dispel one of the myths about speaking in tongues. In my Bible, there is no place at all where the devil speaks in tongues. This is not a sign of being possessed of the devil in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I don't even think the devil knows how to speak in tongues. It's one of the tools that allows God's plans to be secret from the enemy. Okay, so I got together with my son one day. I'll tell you this story. And I was going to put on this video about exorcism. And I thought, I never ever did watch that movie, The Exorcist. So I don't really know. And I know people talk about it a lot, but I don't really know what people think of exorcism. I know they freak out every time you hear the word, but I just want to watch it just to see what people think. And it's a really old movie, and I have to apologize to the makers of the movie because I think they were going for scary, and I actually laughed through the whole thing. I thought it was pretty over the top and pretty just not the way it happens. I mean, the devil wants Christians to think that the devil has more power than God, and that is just not true. That is so not true. And in the movie they had this little girl speaking in tongues, and the priests were so scared of her and everything like this, and I just thought, that is just so not scary to me at all. I just laughed through the whole thing and thought, oh, this is so dumb. But anyways, that was a lesson to me. But no, that is one of the myths concerning speaking in tongues, that it is a gift of the devil, and it is so not. That's what the devil wants you to think, so that you will stay away from this very, very powerful tool of God. Okay? So, don't be afraid. How many times did Jesus tell us, do not fear, don't worry, don't doubt, don't fear. Okay? So, yeah. I had been looking for speaking in tongues for, well, couple, 3-4 years, probably, asking the Lord to give me the gift. Every time in church, I would go up to the front whenever there was an altar call and allow the Holy Spirit, and it just never happened. It just never happened. And I couldn't figure out, okay, well, how come God isn't giving me this gift? And this may be the position that you're in right now, that you've been asking the Holy Spirit to bless you with this gift of speaking in tongues, and it just hasn't happened. And so you're just kind of at a standstill, and you're like, okay, well, am I not good enough? And that's another myth. If you speak in tongues, that does not mean that you are better than anyone else, or cooler, or more sophisticated, or more holy than anybody else. It's a gift. It is not, God just doesn't give these gifts out randomly to anybody. He gives them out to people who are going to use them and use them properly. Okay, so in order to do that, you need to know how to use it properly and what to do about it once you've got it. If not that you do, but you might think, oh, well, I want the gift of speaking in tongues so that I can sound really cool in church and be with all my other friends who speak in tongues. And that's just not a reason that God would give it out. He does not give out the gift of speaking in tongues to be cool. He just doesn't. And I'm sure that's probably not your motivation. But let's examine it. Okay, and like I said, I had been looking for it for 3-4 years, I think, and it just never happened. And so I took some books out of the church library that talked about speaking in tongues. And I remember this one story where this journalist had decided to investigate speaking in tongues and what speaking in tongues was all about, and was this Holy Spirit phenomenon that was kind of hitting the churches, was that really real, or was that some kind of fake thing, or all people faking it? So he took recordings of people speaking in tongues, and each person sounded different. Okay. He took the results to linguists to figure out, are these real languages or what? So as he's going through and interviewing people and getting them to speak in tongues into a tape recorder, he would just interview somebody, sit down and say, okay, well, go ahead. And some people would just go ahead and speak in tongues. And this one lady came in and she said, he was just getting ready to say, okay, go ahead, speak in tongues. And she said, well, I don't just speak in tongues. I need something to be praying about, because all of speaking in tongues is a form of prayer. Okay. So he said, okay, well, my wife has been working on this project and she has been at her wit's end. She's supposed to get this project done by this afternoon, and she was really upset this morning because it seemed like every time she starts, she has to tear up her papers and start all over again for whatever reason. And so maybe you could pray about this project that my wife is working on. So the lady said, okay, we're gonna lay hands on you. You're going to be the interim for her, or the proxy for her, and I'll lay on my hands on you, which was the husband, and we'll say that we're praying for her. Okay, so just think about her while I'm laying hands on you, and then we'll pray for her. So she went ahead, laid hands on him, began speaking in tongues, and he said this was around, I think it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon or something like this. No, it was around noon or something. It was around noon. And they went ahead and finished the recording and all that. And that evening he went home and he spoke to his wife, and, she was busy making dinner, and, they're getting ready for bed. And he said, oh, by the way, how did that project go that you... Oh, she said, oh, it was amazing. She says, it was like I sat down at around noon and it just wrote itself. I just went to the typewriter and I was just going, and I finished it and parceled it up and sent it off, and it's done. It's all done. It was amazing. And so he thought, maybe there is really something to this speaking in tongues, So once he had all his interviews done, he sent all this off to a pile of linguists at a particular university. He also put in samples of people who were pretending to speak in tongues, but did not actually have the gift. So when the linguists got finished, and they were listening to all of these, they, wrote down what they thought. And their results were that each sample of speaking in tongues They could point out which ones were real languages just because of the way the words were formed and the way everything sounded. They could tell. And the ones who were just speaking gibberish, they could pick out those very easily. Say, that's just baby talk. That's just gibberish. Yeah, that's not a language. So it was pretty amazing. Speaking in tongues really isn't a heavenly language, whatever language God gives us to speak, we just go ahead and speak it. Okay? It's not something that God forces on us. We have to go ahead and do the speaking and trust that God speaks what he will. We don't have to understand what we are saying. We just speak. We just go ahead and speak. Okay. So, but it is good to have a subject to pray about so that you can turn around and see the results when it's all done. Baptism in the Holy Spirit is a separate experience than baptism in water. Okay, so you might have been baptized in water. Maybe you had a ceremony in church or something like this. You had your friends and family come and they dunked you in water. Or maybe they sprinkled you or however they did it. You were baptized. And the priest or the pastor said, I baptize you in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. This is a separate experience. That is baptism in water. Okay, sometimes the Holy Spirit, this is a spiritual experience. Sometimes the Spirit will come down during a baptism in water experience, and you will also be baptized in the Holy Spirit. Okay, but you can be like 3 weeks later or something like that, and you go to pray about something, and you allow the Holy Spirit to speak through you, and all of a sudden the Holy Spirit will come down and baptize you in the Holy Spirit, and you begin speaking in tongues. Okay. I remember an experience with my daughter. Actually, she went to Christian camp, and a lot of awesome things were happening in the evening services, and the Holy Spirit just totally came down on this camp, and she spoke in tongues for 3 days straight. She couldn't stop speaking in tongues. Every time she went to go ahead and say something, out would come tongues, and people would go, what? It's like pass the pepper, and she would speak in tongues or whatever. It was it's a truly bizarre experience, but yeah, she can speak in tongues to this day. So in the Bible, we'll see a story where there's a couple of disciples that are walking along and they're traveling, and they come across some people who have been baptized by John the Baptist, and they say, hey, that's really cool. Did you receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit at the same time? And they said, baptism of the Holy Spirit? We don't know anything about any baptism of the Holy Spirit. We just were baptized in water the way John was baptizing everybody. Oh, so one of the disciples laid hands on him and asked God to give him the baptism of the Holy Spirit, and they did. And they began speaking in tongues and carrying on like that. So that was really great. So that's how we see that it was a separate experience from the baptism in water. When I first started speaking in tongues, like I said, I pulled a couple of books out of the library, and the second book that I was reading had a prayer at the end of it. And it was telling about different concepts and different blocks that people have about speaking in tongues. Like some people think, okay, God is going to force my mouth to go up and down and stuff like that. That's no, it is you that goes ahead and speaks. You just have to make sure you're not speaking English, okay? Or you're not speaking your own native tongue. You just go ahead and speak, and you won't understand what it is that comes out. And you just go ahead and speak, and you just allow the Holy Spirit to do whatever, and trust that that is what God is blessing people with, okay? Okay, so I'm sitting there and I'm reading this book about speaking in tongues, and it has this prayer at the end of it. And when I was reading the book, I was actually sitting in a hospital, and my husband had just had some fairly serious surgery. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to go through this prayer and this whole procedure, I should probably pick a topic to pray about. And I looked down and I thought, you know what? There's a topic right there. And I'd never spoken in tongues before, but I thought, well, why don't I try that? I'll go through the prayer. And so I did. I went through the procedure because there's a little bit of a procedure to it. And you have to relax and breathe and all of this stuff and focus on certain things. And we'll talk about that in another video. And so at the end of the prayer, at the end of the procedure, I opened my mouth and I began speaking in tongues. And I thought, that is absolutely amazing. I didn't understand a word that I was saying. And, you're not supposed to understand it. You just have to trust that that's what it is. And of course, as soon as you're done, doubts are going to come in and go. And, the enemy is going to say, oh, that wasn't it. That was just gibberish. You just have to never mind that and just trust that that is what it is. Okay. So yeah, if you have been praying about speaking in tongues and you're just not getting it, it's not happening for you, just pray about it. Pray about your motivations. Like I said, it's not to be cool in church or whatever. It is so that you can pray more effectively for the people and the needs that you see around you. Okay, so in the next video, lesson 2, we'll talk more about this and we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so peace, love, everybody. Let me know what you think in the comments, or if you have any questions, put it in the comments and I'll try to answer your questions. So yeah, so like, subscribe, and comment. Okay, and we'll see you on the next video. Peace, love. Bye-bye.